Okay, hello and welcome to Resources You Need to Know About. Today, my guest is Tami Crea. Tami is a business building expert who built a publishing empire of five different titles and 50,000 copies every month. And she did a lot of the work that she teaches people today by teaching people for her magazines how to tell stories. Those were always her best performing articles, her best performing, uh, uh, I guess, in place of ads, teaching people how to tell stories. So that's led her to what she does today in the Echo Authority. And today, she helps modern experts build their authority online in places like LinkedIn by helping them to understand how to tell stories in place of doing cold calling, pitches, etc. And it's turned out to be just an absolutely marvelous way of getting people to increase their sales, increase their referral partners. And this is something that I think you guys need to know about. So let's get you on camera, Tami. Here we
Hi there.
go. Hi there. So tell us about your journey, how you started in publishing and how you ended up teaching all of us how to tell stories.
Well, starting in publishing happened a very, very long time ago, actually back in 1982, before the internet existed. And what existed was print. And so we had print media, we had newspapers, we had magazines, we had books, and they were all paper. And so I ended up with a magazine publishing company. And as Wendy said, I had five different titles and I printed 50,000 copies, and they were actually mailed. US Post Office mailed back then. I had a heck of a postage bill every month. But the thing that I found was, as my team was going out and selling ads to support, magazines, which everybody did back then, what worked best for my clients were advertorials. And this is where they bought a space in the magazine and we wrote an article about them and we told their story, because people respond to stories when they come into a business. Having read the article, what happened was they felt like they knew the people that were there before they even came in. So they were very comfortable, like going into a store they'd never been in before, because they knew the history, they knew the people behind it. They just felt very comfortable, like they weren't walking into a new situation. The same thing translates to online. So I ended up in my journey after, print kind of became not a thing for a while. Going online, I ended up as a high ticket closer and heard thousands and thousands of stories from people there and realized that really that's what makes the world go round, is somebody sharing a story, just like Wendy is letting me share my story right now.
I remember years ago, Tammy, hearing that in Japan, people wouldn't buy a product until they understood the company, until they felt good about the company. And I always thought that made a whole lot of sense because if you get to know the company and its values and how it got to where it is and what its ideals are, etc., then you feel better about buying the products as opposed to in America, it was kind of like, buy my stuff.
Yeah, we are good at that.
So, question for you is, so you've got Authority Echo now, and you you basically, in this approach, you're using client stories to generate inbound demand in places like LinkedIn and other social media accounts. So, what are the most common mistakes that you see experts making when they're trying to build authority online? So, going from what you were talking about, you were writing their story for a magazine, but when they go online and they're trying to sell, share their content and share their expertise, what are the biggest mistakes you see that they make?
They go too fast. I mean, it's the old story, where someone says, it's like walking into a bar, seeing a guy seeing a beautiful woman, walking up to her and saying, let's get married. That's still what the sales industry is pushing too much today. When you first meet somebody online, you can ask for a conversation. It doesn't always work, but you can at least ask for a conversation. What I do is teach people how to ask for an interview, which elevates the person and giving them value before you even tell them what you do. You say, can I interview you? And for my LinkedIn newsletter is usually the hook that we use, because that's exactly what we do. And then obviously you do interview them and you do publish them. But along the way, you get to know them, you hear their story. Usually people want to hear your story a little bit too, not 100% because the spotlight's on them. But what people do is they go too fast. They, have a 5-minute conversation with someone and they say, buy my stuff. And everybody goes, I'll get back to you on that. Well, they're not going to get back to you. They don't even know what you're offering them. They don't care because you're moving too fast. However, the flip side of that, honestly, is the other mistake that I see is spending way too much time in chit chat with people, because everybody says, well, in LinkedIn, you have to get to know somebody, you have to offer value, but nobody knows how to do that. And so what they do is they get on the DMs, the direct messages, and they say, how you doing today? Well, guess what? These are busy people, right? They don't know you. They don't want to share that their, big toe hurts. So what happens is that you don't actually have a real conversation. So that's walking that line between just bombarding someone with buy my stuff and actually having the ability to get to know them a little bit, and then having a conversation, not about buy my stuff, but how can we help each other?
Right.
Because that's what business is built on. It's somebody offers something, somebody purchases that something, it helps them. It also helps the person they're buying it from.
Okay. So if people are going to slow down and kind of tell their stories about what they're doing and why they're doing it, which is for me always the fascinating part, right?
Me too.
What are you doing? What you, how did you get there? What made you want to do this? Especially people who have any kind of a service. It's always fascinating to me how you got there.
Yep.
So if you slow down and you kind of get to that, then people get to know you, kind of like the people in Japan wanting to know about the company.
Yep.
Right? They get to know you, they get a good feel for you, for your values, for your ideals, etc. And then they'll feel a lot more comfortable either referring you or buying from you. Presumably. Okay. So you started really content marketing before that was even a thing online.
Yeah, right? I really did. Yeah, because there was no online when I started. It literally did not exist.
So what's the difference between doing it in print and doing it online?
What's really interesting, and I say this again and again, I have 40 years experience in sales and marketing. And for 40 years before I started, and 40 years before that, the actual idea behind sales and marketing has really never changed. Only the tools have changed. Now we've gone from print to online. We have to do it a little bit differently. LinkedIn newsletters, a newsletter online is the same thing as a newsletter in print. We have subscribers, we have, people that want to get that information, etc. But it's still all about the idea of slowing down. I mean, I've actually put in another step that slows it down even more, because I talk to people in a direct message, ask if I can interview them for the newsletter, publish the newsletter, hear their story, find out what their struggles are. And then if we have not reached any kind of an agreement one way or the other, whether or not we feel like we have some synergy and a good fit, I ask them to attend a hands-on workshop, small group that isn't a webinar. We're not shoving information out. This is my whole thing here is everybody is pushing their agenda out. They're pushing their brilliance. They're pushing their information. Everything I do is a pull method. Pull people in, learn their stories, learn what they need so that you can then help them better, more thoroughly, more in sync with what they're doing. So I've started doing these mini workshops now where we bring on 5 or 10 people and we are working with these people. We are saying, what are you struggling with? What in this short half-hour, 45-minute workshop with everybody on here, what can we help you with? What can we help everybody with? And we really dive in, not about our agenda, about what they need, so that we can give them information so they can walk out of that workshop going, I learned something. I'm further ahead than I was when I came online for this workshop. Again, it's getting to know them getting to know me. Right.
So interesting thing with that is it's kind of like a mastermind where they're coming in and they're saying, I've got this issue, not really sure how to handle it. and you're
Right.
giving them ideas on how to do that. So it's kind of like an upscale mastermind.
Yeah, it kind
Um,
of is.
and people spend thousands of dollars to be parts of those type of communities where they can uh, pick everybody's brain to find solutions to their problems. So
And I
that's
do
a
that when I'm teaching people, when people decide that they do want to work with me, and so they want to learn my entire method.
Mhm.
And what I do with that is I teach them everything they need to know. I don't hold anything back. I do strategy with them, but I put people in smaller groups of about 10. And the
Mhm.
reason for having that instead of just one huge group, there's a couple of reasons, but one of them is exactly that, so that it becomes a peer-to-peer mastermind, so they can help each other because everybody has a different skill set. But the other thing that I found strongly online is if you're in a big group of 500 people or whatever, like you belong to a school group, something along those lines, that platform, they always encourage you to post and get help. But so many people don't want to post because there's somebody there that blasts them for posting that. Well, that's too easy, or that's too hard, or that's not good enough. Or people will literally tear people down in that kind of a big community with the anonymity. And I don't want to see that happening. Again, this is kind of like a mastermind in the sense that you get that personal help. And so I do small groups so that if there is a disruptor in that group, I'm going to hear about it. People can tell me there's a disruptor in the group, and we need to change that out because that's not acceptable.
Right. I understand what you're saying, that anonymity seems to give people permission to do things that they would never dream of doing face to face.
Exactly. I
And
just can't believe it. But yeah, it
and it's sad really because people
is.
who typically do that are people who are insecure, in pain, have a problem, and the only way that they can alleviate their feelings of unease seem to be to attack somebody else.
Yep.
And that's really sad,
It
because
is. It is.
brilliant people then will back off and say, hey, I don't have time for this. I'm just not going to post. I'm not going to help anybody. I'm not going to go out there and expose myself
Right.
because people are out there doing this. That's really
Right, that's
sad.
what I try to keep into small group. Again, this is the mastermind idea of an intimate mastermind, in that you've got all these brilliant people in a room, and I do group coaching with large groups in this. I bring the entire group together at a point, every couple of weeks we do group calls where everybody's in the room and they can start to, get to know each other that way too. So there's this small group, but then there is the opportunity of doing workshops with larger groups as well.
Right. Okay. Um, so you basically have moved from print over to online, and you
Yes.
do use various tools. How do you decide what tools are really good, the ones that you want to use, that you want to teach other people to use?
I always buy them first. I mean,
Hmm.
it's really just that simple. I test them, and I test them real world. And if I find something that I think is just great, I will, I may become an affiliate, but that's not the reason that I ever recommend it, because half the time I forget to give my affiliate link to people. If I really like something, if I really like something, I'm going to tell people about it because I want it to continue, right? And if I
Right.
want it to continue, I figure I got to spread the word about it because it's my responsibility to help them make money too,
Hmm.
so that I can continue to use their tools so that we have this circle going on.
Okay. Um, let's see. So, last question for you, because I promised to keep this to 15 minutes.
Yep.
When you're dealing with people and you get clients who are in a very crowded market,
Yes.
how do you teach them to stand out with their expertise? How do you help them uncover what's unique and special about them, that even by telling their story, somebody's going to say, hey, that person is different?
You know, I do it using business strategy and by diving in with people. I've heard so many stories. I've been doing this for so long. There is an always an interesting way of looking at your business, something that is unique. And it almost physically hurts me when I hear someone parroting the exact same thing about their business that I've heard 15 times before, because there is always something unique about their way of looking at things, the way they came to it, their background. You don't have to tell the story of I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks and didn't have enough to eat, and I raised myself up into being a 7-figure business. You don't need that kind of origin story, but everybody has an origin story.
Mhm.
And once you really start to look at it and remove yourself and your own emotions out of that story, which is hard to do with your own story, that's why it helps to have someone else guide you. You have something brilliant and unique, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. It's just a matter of uncovering it. And again, I was a high ticket closer for a while, and uncovering stuff was one of the things I was taught very, very well in that.
Right. Okay, so Tami, thank you so much for being my guest and for allowing my audience to get to know you a little bit. I'm going to bring up how to get hold of you. Uh, authorityecho.online will take you to Tami's calendar if
Yep.
you would like to get hold of her, or you can text her on her phone to
Yep.
say, hi, heard you on the interview with Wendy and would love to get in touch with you. And excuse me. Allergies in Nevada.
I thought you went to Nevada to get rid of allergies.
It happens every interview. So this is how you get hold of Tami. Let her know that you heard her interview and you would love to have a chat with her and see how she can help you to stand out as an authority in your field. And as always, as a small business owner, you cannot be your own attorney. And believe it or not, AI, it never passed the bar. So if you need legal services, identity theft protection, get a hold of me. LinkedIn, you can email me or you can text me to that phone number. Okay, thank you so much, Tami. I really appreciate your being on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I always love to talk to people. So, I hope to hear from lots of you so that I can find out what your unique story is.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Take care and go watch other people who are resources that you need to know. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.